So we're in May now, so April is all done, and at the beginning of a new month, I like to look back on the previous month at all the games that I've played, and I often rank them from my favorite to least favorite, so I thought I would share my top 9 games for April of 2021. So first, let's look at the stats. This past month, I have played 53 times with 37 different games. Now we're in the middle of a pandemic, so it's all been in one location at home and with the same 6 players, which are my family member. We actually ended up playing 13% of our collection, so I thought that was kind of cool. Okay, so now let's have a look at our top 9. So for number 9, we have Le Havre, the Inland Port. So I've never played Le Havre, the base game, so I don't know how this 2-player version compares, but this particular game was great. It was so neat, actually. Each player gets a board that has this dial and another board that keeps track of the resources. So every time we purchase a building, it goes on the right of the dial. But then at the end of each round, that dial moves forward. So the further the dial moves, the further the building is and more valuable the action is. Because I'll take a close-up on the dial here. So as you can see, right to the right of the dial, it's a 0, but when it goes into the next section, then it'd be a 2, then a 3, then a 4, then a 4 plus a coin. So the buildings that are under the 2, you can actually do the action twice. Now if you hold on before doing it and it goes into the 3, you can do the action 3 times and 4 times and so on. Now if the building ever reaches the dial again on the left side of the dial, then the building has to be sold for half the value. So you kind of want to make sure you get buildings you can utilize because they are worth points at the end. So it's better to keep them. You can also pay to utilize the building on the other player's board. And when you do utilize a building, it resets it. So it sends the building back to the right of that dial. It's such a neat mechanism that it was very interesting to play. The other part of this game here that's really interesting is the resource management. So you have this grid where you put your resource, and that's how you keep track of what you got. Now the action that the building do allows you to move those cubes in different ways. So it might allow you to move the cube up 1 column, or maybe it'll go up and back 1 row as well. So it increases your resources, but ideally you want to be in a resource that is as high and to the right, and here's why. So on this board right now, the brown is on the column of 0, but the row 1, I'm wondering if I have my rows and columns mixed up here, but it's 0, 1, so it's actually worth 1. The blue is on 9, 1, so you actually have 10 of the blue resources. The yellow on here is on the 9 and 6, so we have 15 resources. Now when you spend those resources to purchase the buildings, you would, let's say I'm buying something that requires 2 resources. If it was the yellow, I would move the yellow cube to the left 2 times. Now if I was having to use the blue resources cannot move to the left 2 times. In fact, I can only go there 1 time, but I need to pay 2, so I would have to go down. And now it's costing me 3 resources instead of 2, and I have to overpay. So that's a very interesting way of keeping track of the resources. I really like the whole puzzle side of this. Next, on our top 9, we are at number 8, and number 8 is the Quest for El Dorado. So this is a deck building racing game. It's pretty neat. When you set up the board, you have these different portions that you add up and put together to create your map, and there's different terrain that you have to go through. Now your deck will utilize, so the machete lets you go through the jungle, the paddles will allow you to go through the water and so on. Now you can use the cards that way to make it through the map, because the goal is to make it through the map and reach the golden city at the end of the map, and that's how you win, or to purchase more cards. So with these cards, you have the main market that you can purchase. Now anytime that each card has 3 of them, so anytime you've reached the bottom and all 3 cards have been used up and you have an opening, you now have access to the top 12 cards to bring one of those down into the market. So the cards you have access to will change, and every time on your turn, if there's an opening in the market, you can select which is a new card that you're going to bring into the market. It's very neat. It's kind of fun with that race aspect. On the 2-player side, if you're playing 2 players, each player has 2 meeples to get across to the Golden City. It's a fun, different take on a deck building that kind of adds that racing element. So now for number 7 out of all the games I've played in April is Watergate. So I've heard of this game and I wanted to, it sounded great, got great reviews, and I wanted to get it, but I really didn't know hardly anything about the Watergate scandal, so I decided to Google that first. And what was happening is Nixon, who was the president at the time, came from a military background, and during his presidency was doing tons of wars. So there was wars pretty much the entire time he was in office, and it was creating for him not to be very popular with the people. So a group of his administration got together trying to manipulate things to make sure that he got reelected. And they took some illegal and unethical ways of doing this. One of them was when they've broke into the Watergate building to steal some documents to destroy and get rid of them. So this all came to be exposed when 2 journalists got a hold of some of the information, and they really dug and revealed tons and tons behind them, which eventually created for an official FBI investigation. So in this game, this is a tug-of-war game where one person plays as the journalist in the publishing company, and the other player plays as the Nixon administration. So as the publisher, your goal is to collect enough evidence to create a link between your informants and Nixon. So you're trying to create 2 links in order to win. As the Nixon side, your goal is to remain in office long enough to be reelected again, and you do that by gaining 5 momentum tokens. And at the same time, you're trying to block the other player so that by destroying evidence or buying informants to kind of make it so that some of their path gets destroyed and makes it a little bit harder for them. This is a card game, so you have a deck of cards that you start with, and there's the top action, which allows you to move evidence or the tokens, and there's a bottom action that's the event or different things that kind of gives you special things that you can do. Now a lot of times if you use the bottom action, that card is removed from the game, so you can only do that action 1 time. And as I said, this is a tug-of-war game, so at the beginning of every round, 3 evidence gets put face down on the middle of the board, and the 2 tokens. You will use your cards to try to move the evidence towards your side. Now Nixon knows what those evidence are because they're the one who did it, and we don't quite know, so we're kind of guessing. But I could take my card and say, is there a green evidence? The Nixon player would have to let me know if there is. If there is, they reveal it, and then I can spend the card, let's say the one with 4, to move the green evidence token 4 spaces towards me. Now they could spend a card that moves it back towards them as well, and you keep manipulating the evidence and the token that way until the end of the round, and whatever is on your side of the board is what you've gained access to. So as a journalist, I'm going to be putting evidence on that pegboard, trying to create a link between an informant that I have or got a hold of, I guess, and Nixon. So you're trying to create a path. Now, as the Nixon side, any evidence you get, you're going to actually put them down face down on the black side, because those are evidence you've destroyed, and you're trying to block the path they're trying to create. You can actually also buy, I guess, kind of give hush money to some of these informants, where it makes it the informant is not available to the journalist as well. And as well, of course, the goal is to collect as many, 5 of those red tokens throughout the game as well. So you don't want to concentrate so much on blocking that you don't actually get those tokens either. It's a really neat, fun tug-of-war game. I've played as both the Nixon and the journalist side, and it's a lot of fun. I see why it's getting such popular reviews, because it is good. So now for my game number 6 that I've played in April, it is Keyflower. Keyflower is such a neat game. Now the only drawback I would say is it can play a little long, and it gives a lot of room for analysis paralysis. So more players, if you get people that are very meticulous with their choices, then it can take that much longer. This game plays over 4 rounds for each season, so it starts with spring and it ends at winter. Every player has their own little cardboard houses where you can hide all of your meeples and your tokens that you get. So at the beginning of the game, you get 8 meeples out of 3 colors, either blue, red, or yellow. What's neat with it is the goal of the game is you're going to be building your village, so you're buying these tiles to add to the village, but you're bidding on these tiles. Now if I bid on a tile that's untouched with a yellow meeple, now anybody who wants to outbid me has to do that with the yellow meeple as well. So if I put 1, the next player would have to put 2 to outbid me, and then maybe the player after that would put 3, and then they outbid us all. And you can't go above 3. So also, you do not have to wait for those tiles to be purchased or to be in your own village in order to do the action. You could, as they're bidding on this, put a yellow meeple on top of the tile to activate its ability and just do the action that it does. Now, whoever wins that tiles will get that meeple added to their resources, so it gives them more power to bid and do actions on the next round. You can also, when you have your own village started to create, you can do the actions on your village. You can do the action on other people's village. The goal is to build your village and kind of upgrade some of the buildings that you have in there, so that at the end of the game, the 4 rounds, your village is worth the most points. It's such a neat game. I really like that color bidding aspect of it. It's a lot of fun, but as I mentioned, it could be a little bit long. Which to me it doesn't really feel that long, as long as you have players that takes quick action. Otherwise then it can take a little bit longer. Now for number 5 in all the games I've played in April, it is Birmingham. This is a game that was gifted to me, and it's actually the version that has the clay, what did they call them now? I forget. So the poker chips that they use for the money instead of little cardboard bits. This game is really neat when you got it all set up. It's very beautiful table presence. Every player gets their own board with all of the tiles. It takes place during the industrial era. So you're building different industries across the UK, trying to create a network where you can move some of the resources to create further industries and so on. If you build an industry that had 3 coals on it and you're able to utilize all of the 3 coals, now you can utilize other people's coals as well if you're tapped into their network also. And then when those 3 coals are utilized, that building upgrades. And then at the end of the first era, you get to score all of your points that you've created on your board. All the level 1 buildings are removed at that point, and then you get into the second era where you construct better industries, and at the end of that era you would score again, and whoever has the most points at the end of the game is the winner. This is a neat, fun game. It's a little bit more thinky. There's you're kind of creating that network, managing your cards, because your cards is what you got to spend to do an action, but it can also be showing what you're going to build, whether which industry or which city. So you want to manage your cards as well. When you run out of the deck, that's when the era ends and you move on to the next one. Fun game. So now for number 4 out of all the games I've played in April, it is The Captain is Dead. I really like this game. I bought this game because I was building a Star Trek game collection. This one doesn't actually follow the exact IP of Star Trek, but the influence is obvious. And it's really neat. So it's a cooperative game that has kind of a pandemic feel to it. So basically, our captain is dead. The ship has been infiltrated by aliens, and our core, our warp core is damaged, so we cannot warp out of there. So the goal is to acquire enough of the proper skills to fix the core enough time so that we can warp again. And in the meantime, we're getting attacked by aliens, different things keeps happening, and our force shield can get damaged. If it ever gets damaged to 0 and we take another hit, we die. If we ever get overrun by aliens, then we die as well. It's a neat game. There's tons going on to it, so you can move from different areas on the ship. So if you're on the bridge, you can fix the shields from there. Now if you go into the armory, you can shoot torpedoes towards the aliens ships that are causing some damage and different things like that. It's a fun game. It's not an easy one to win, which is good that it's challenging. Very fun, very great game. We enjoy this one quite a bit. Now, number 3 of all the games I've played in April is Monster Menace America. This game was gifted to me years ago, and then, well, I mean, if you look at the board or the box, this isn't a very attractive looking box, and this is the board, not much better. So the first time we played, because I was trying to get my unplayed games played before I decided if I was getting rid of the games or not. So we played this one, and the game is amazing. That is until the end. The end's horrible, but the game is just perfect. So each player controls a monster, and you're going around terrorizing the USA and destroying different cities, and you get benefits and rewards from destroying those cities. And then all of those players also controls one branch of the military, whether it's the Army or the Navy and so on, and you deploy those onto the map as well, and you try to attack all the other monsters, trying to slow them down. Now the original rules is that at the end you would use your military to attack the monsters, and then once the last stomp tile has been put on the map, it triggers the end game, and then it's all the monsters battle to the death. And it's flawed. It just didn't work very well. So we've done a few changes following some suggestions that were posted on the BGG forums and based on our own experience. But even though when we were playing the games with the flawed portion of it, we would end up talking about the games hours afterwards. It was such a neat game. So some of the changes we've done is that the rule was that whoever attacks the monster goes first. No, not goes first. The monster attacks first always. So we've changed that whoever attacks goes first. So if the military strikes first, the military gets to attack first. You can move, stomp the different cities, still collect hit points. You can also collect infamy tokens. If you smash a spot on the map that's actually a base, you get to remove the army token, or get to remove, because when they get in the attack and they get killed, they go back onto your board and you can deploy them again. But if your base has been destroyed, then it's out of the game completely. So that was kind of following the same rules pretty much. We've changed it that when the last smash token is put on the map, it creates a scoring ending instead. So for every hit points that you've accumulated, you would get a point. For every infamy token you've accumulated, you would get that as a point as well. So there's benefit into trying to heal, into trying to avoid getting hit. It worked a lot better doing it that way, and this is a game that we just completely love, obviously, if it's my number 3. So next, number 2 out of all the games I've played in April, and this one is Fallout. I haven't played the video games, my boys have. I'm not sure if this is what they like this game so much, but this game is great. It's an adventure game, so you start with the map all set up, and now most of the tiles are upside down, so you don't really know where anything is. So you'll go around exploring, revealing maps. You can go into different cities that have market and do the market action to buy different things and sell some of the equipment that you've collected. You can also go into different cities that you kind of do the interaction, and you'll come across different scenarios. So the scenarios, your cards get pulled up and they'll say, you know, you come across a dog, and do you ignore the dog, or do you try to save the dog, or different things like that. And depending on what you end up doing, so if you do a certain thing, then the rewards that you get, maybe you become evil, if you're doing bad things. But then new cards get added into the deck depending on what you've chosen. So the story changes as you play. It's really neat. I really enjoy this one quite a bit. And we've played this one quite a few times, and it's our number 2, or my number 2 this month. And then, let me show you some closer pictures. Yeah, because you get the monsters gets sent or spawns at when the card is revealed. Now they're there, but they're not spawned until the card comes up that activates them. So then they go up, and then when they activate it again, when they're active, they start moving towards you, and then can attack you. It's a fun game with the battles, the survival, and the adventure side of it. So then the number 1 game that I played this month is Mystic Vale. Mystic Vale is a deck building game, I guess you would say. It's not really deck building because you have 20 cards to start, and you will only ever have 20 cards. But as you play the game, you buy these clear cards that you can add into the sleeves of the 20 cards that you have, improving the actual action that the card does. This is a push your luck game because you start with your initial deck, and you flip a card over and you put it into your play area. Then you flip the next card and decide if you want to put that in your play area. Some cards have a red symbol on it that is called decay. If you ever revealed a third one, because while you reveal it, it's not until it's in the play area, you don't get the ability of the card. So now if you reveal a third decay, you have to decide if you want to add it to your play area so you can take the benefit of that card. But if a fourth decay gets shown, now you bust and you end up doing nothing. So maybe instead of pulling that third decay into your playing area, you leave it there and then you play with what you got. You can utilize the blue orbs that are on the cards to purchase new cards, or new layers to add to your cards, making your cards more powerful. And then you also get symbols that gets added to those cards that you can utilize those symbols to purchase the more colorful cards that are on the top there. Those cards will give you special abilities as you play, or as well as victory points at the end. With the victory points, some cards are going to be worth victory points when you purchase them, as well as those colorful cards are going to be worth victory points, but then you're also going to have cards that allows you to collect victory points. So when that all of those victory points are collected, it triggers the end of the game, and whoever has the highest score at the end is the winner. This is such a neat, fun game. Not great to take pictures of because all the cards are see-through, but very fun. So this is just a recap of the top 9 games that I have played in April. I like to do my ranking using the Pub Meeple ranking system, which you can all use. It's a free program that you can utilize. Just Google it. It'll you add all the games that you want to compare, and it'll give you a bunch of comparison between this game and this game. Which one do you like best? And you click on the one you like best, and it'll show you so many different combinations, and then ranks everything else at the end. Sometimes I'm just as surprised as everybody else as to which ones my favorites are. But it's a neat way of doing it. So I will show you the other games that I have played that weren't on the top 9, just to kind of show you how they got ranked. So number 10 we had Subdivision, and then 11 Suburbia. 12 was Monuments, Wonders of Antiquity, and then 13 Power Grid. Power Grid is so good, but sometimes when you play, if you get an obvious lead, you're playing the game knowing you cannot catch up, and that kind of takes away from a little bit from the fun of it. Number 14 was Pandemic Rapid Response, so it's all with dice and moving around, so it's kind of a real-time game. Lotus, beautiful, beautiful game. 16 is Railways of the World, the card game. That one was actually very interesting, and I really enjoyed that one. Number 17, Unexploded Cow. Sounds silly. It is silly, but it's tons of fun. Diamond is another push your luck game. We have Century Spice Road, which is a resource management game. Race to Adventure, which was actually really neat. I was surprised I enjoyed that one so much. Ohanabi was number 21. This one is neat. It's kind of a card drafting game that you create 3 columns, and you can only add on the top or below the column, but you have to maintain numerical order. So if you put a big gap and you end up something that would fit in that gap, you can't go in there, and it kind of messes with your setup. Bonanza, classic, wonderful game. Gyrating Hamsters, which is probably our most played game this year. The kids love it. Love Letter, beautiful game. Airline to Sea has a neat 2-player, like you're trying to win the most out of 3 battles. It's neat. It's really fun. Cockroach Poker Royale, which is a bluffing game. Star Trek Flux, because I'm building a Star Trek collection. Boston really is a card game that's kind of based on the Cthulhu theme. And the goal of the game is to not be the last man stuck in this really village or town. So last player standing is the loser. Chozon, I'm pretty sure I'm not pronouncing that properly, but this was a neat, I don't want to say area control, because it's like you're collecting cards, and whoever has the most card of one kind get the special ability that card does, and it's a lot of fun. That one was neat. Trash Panda, cute push your luck game. Clue the card game. I like Clue. The thing I don't like about Clue is having to roll the dice to make it to the right room so that you can ask the question to see. The card game kind of takes care of that. Now it's just a full game is really just about getting the evidence, trying to find out who the murderer is. It's neat. No Thanks, kind of a party game where you're trying to collect as little points as possible. Patronize, I think Patronize is actually made by the same maker of Love Letter, although it's a lot more complex than Love Letter is. It was a neat game. I'd have to play that one again just to kind of get a better sense of it. It Again. It Again is a really fun trick-taking game, but I hate the name. And then they've got a bunch of cards that kind of has that hit the play or hit the, what, I can't remember what they're called, but it's so annoying to have to say that awkward to pronounce name. But the gameplay itself is really fun. Welcome Back to the Dungeon. It's another push your luck game where you are trying to take away some of the items for whomever is going to go into the dungeon. So you want to stay in the game long enough to take stuff away so that whoever does go in the dungeon, it's challenging enough that they don't just win. But you also want to be able to pull back soon enough so that whoever goes in the dungeon has enough, like if it's you going in the dungeon, that there's enough items to make it through and beat all the monsters. It's kind of a neat game. Monopoly Deal. I enjoy Monopoly Deal. That's the only Monopoly game that I own and will play most of the time. But it can have a lot of take that, because you're building all these set collection with the cards, and there could be a card that all of a sudden it takes all of your properties, and then you end up with almost nothing. So if you get frustrated with that, you may not enjoy Monopoly Deal, but I do. And then the final game that we had played in the month of April is Uno. It's a classic, and it is my son's most favorite game, so it's very overplayed in our household, but you know, keep him happy. So now, those are all the games that we played in April. If you want to follow me on Facebook, my Facebook page is Didsbury and Area is playing all the games, or on Instagram, boardgame_mama. I hope you guys got to play tons of games in April as well, and stay tuned to see what I play in May.